Isn't that incredible?
It's an amazing effect.
And it's just the damper pedals held all the way through that. Beethoven was an innovator. He did things that nobody else had done. And I mean, the sonatas aren't just remarkable for that.
He was bold enough to do that.
Well, it was bold, but it worked.
It worked. Mm-hmm.
You know, somebody can do bold things and they just don't work. You say, well, that's very bold, but who cares?
Who cares?
You know? Exactly. But Beethoven did it and it worked. You say, wow.
That was beautiful.
Well, maybe thinking, my gosh, I can't play all of these if I'm going to do Opus 110. Look at the opening of the Waldstein Sonata for something totally different.
Oh, play the Waldstein. That is just great. That is fun to hear. That's fun to play
what a
too, isn't
motor! Well, it's just great. It gets all the blood flowing and the brain going and the passion there. So I love that sonata. Let me think. Where do we go from here? These are, you were asking earlier about periods, and we're now perhaps in the middle period. But I don't think of this as being the middle period, but these are, he wrote the first 15 of his sonatas in 6 years. Isn't that incredible?
That is amazing.
Almost half of them in the first 6 years he was in Vienna, when he started Opus 2, number 1. Then these middle sonatas are enormous works. They're practically like symphonies for piano. They're huge. The Waldstein is huge. And then, of course, Opus 57, which is the Appassionata, is also huge. I mean, these are symphonies for piano. They're not simply piano works.
That's a great way to describe it. Symphony for the piano.
Musical architecture is the best way to describe Beethoven. He was a structuralist, and he got his melodies out of motivic development. And anyway, listen to the opening. I don't know how much of this I'll play, but listen to the opening of the Appassionata, which has rather shocking characteristics like the Pathétique, only even more so. And Beethoven's in a rage when he does. Excuse the funny notes there, but one has to practice these to keep in shape.
I was just thinking, John, I was thinking how many people would be able to sit down and off the top of their head go through this is true. I hope the class understands what an amazing feat this is and what a treat it is for our class. This is phenomenal.
Thank you.
That you're able to do this for us.
I can play that run, actually. If I had another take, I could do it.
I think it was just fine.
Okay.
Great job. And so we would be... was he going deaf yet?
Yes, he was. He had been losing his hearing for quite a long time and was, needless to say, very depressed about it because this is what he lived for. He loved the piano. He just felt as though he was doomed and was suffering a terrible fate. But you know, we're getting close to the later sonatas. I'm trying to think of what I might. There's a sonata just before he begins his so-called late sonatas, which the late ones are the last 5, from 101 through 111. But there's a sonata right before that, Opus 90 in E minor, where he has sort of one of his characteristic dialogues where there's a strong personality and a weak personality right at the same time, and it's kind of interesting. interesting? And he does that in the sonata I'm going to play later too, in the second movement, where he has rather explosive, strong things to say. Well, I'll jump ahead.
Go ahead.
You see that drama, and he's angry, and then all of a sudden he's gentle, and we get some of that Beethoven characteristic.
And that was his personality.
That's his
character.
So.
Okay, this is, I'm in awe of this. I think it's fantastic. And now we're going to talk just briefly about the late sonatas then.
Okay.
And these are the most...
Well, they're the most unusual, they're the most uncharacteristic, they're the most incredible sonatas really that had ever been written. It's hard to even relate them in many ways to the earlier sonatas. He started using fugue.
Could you tell the students quickly what a fugue is? This might be hard to describe.
Well, fugues have expositions where you have a subject. Well,
demonstrate it.
You have. And then you have an answer. And then you have another subject and another answer, depending on how many voices. But fugues are contrapuntal compositions, made famous, of course, by Bach.
Which we'll study later.
Right, and in his 48 Preludes and Fugues. And of course, Beethoven grew up with Bach.
Yes.
And then the fugues appeared in his late sonatas. And fugues are linear compositions. They're contrapuntal, which means one line at a time. And instead of thinking vertically with harmonic issues, he's thinking in a linear fashion.
Okay, we'll talk about that later on too. Well, of these 5 late ones, would you want to describe all 5 of them?
Well, they're all different. They're night and day. There isn't a thread. Some of them are tender and wistful and very, very beautiful. The Opus 109.
So
I mean, that's just and the opening of 110 that I'm going to play. And it's just so beautiful, and you think of poor old deaf Beethoven with his financial problems and his stomach and liver problems and being abandoned by a lot of people, and here he is writing this intensely personal music that is just gripping. It's tragic, you know. The third movement of this sonata is like a diary. It's like an outpouring. It's just unbelievable. And he does things in this movement that people still can't figure out what he was doing or why he did that. There's a place in this third movement, which is like an aria, where he has a big rolled chord. Repeats this A 27 times. It's just heartbreaking, you know. And there are several places in this where he repeats the same chord over and over, and it isn't merely written as obsessive. I mean, this is a powerful statement. Why did he do that? And people are still trying to figure out what these sonatas are saying. So,
Professor McIntyre has agreed to perform for us a late Beethoven sonata, Opus 110, which he was demonstrating here, and that is going to be such a treat for our class. But before we hear your performance, is there anything other than a couple of these things that you've demonstrated that you would tell the class to listen for in
this sonata?
Yes.
I would listen for the changes in character that occur, unusual things that occur that are totally unexpected, key changes, mood swings, and try to relate to the fact that these are not usual sonatas. They weren't like his Appassionata or like the Waldstein or the Moonlight. These are very, very distinctive. This particular sonata is, it starts out with this romantic, beautiful theme. Second movement has this argument going on, and then it has absolutely crazy things happening. The third movement is like a very, very personal, tortured Beethoven, thinking perhaps about how lonely he was and how frustrated, and it's very candid and very honest. The last movement, of course, has the fugues that we talked about. And the fugues, interestingly enough, if you look, Beethoven used a cyclic technique. If you look at the beginning of this sonata, he uses those notes in the fugue. They're the first notes of the fugue. And then he does it upside down, and he does he simply turns it upside down and does the fugue upside down.
Okay.
So
they can listen to that in the fourth movement,
right.
in the last movement.
And then the intriguing thing is that the entire sonata ends in great triumph, and he was like triumphing over the odds, and it ends with this great, glorious, powerful ending that is just awesome. So
we can't wait to hear it. This is going to be such a treat.
Well, thank
you so much
for
this very informative interview and demonstration. I appreciate it so much, and I know the class is also appreciative and really amazed.
Well, I don't know about the amazed part.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.